Hello, I'm Pat Shea, Senior Advisor at the Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education, WICHE.
And I'm Dan Klein, Professor of English, medievalist by trade, and Director of General Education at the University of Alaska Anchorage.
So today we're going to talk about Interstate Passport, a national program for general education transfer. And we're going to talk about it in three different areas. We're going to talk about the problem that students experience in transfer. Then we're going to talk about the solution, which Interstate Passport addresses. And then we're going to talk about some of the results of this exciting new program. So to start off in talking about the program, we know from the National Student Clearinghouse in the study they did with a cohort of students from 2011 that they followed for 6 years, that 38% of those students transfer. This is a much higher number than many people realize. And of that 38%, 27%, a little bit more than 27%, actually cross state lines. And it's so many states have worked on trying to smooth the transfer pathway within their state lines, but it really doesn't help students that cross state lines. And 80% of the students we know from a CCRC study of community college students transfer before they're earning the 2-year degree. So Interstate Passport addresses that early stage when students are achieving their general education credits. And they're most likely at that time period to drop out or to transfer. So that's one of the reasons it's so important to address the transfer problem at that point.
And I think it's probably pretty well known among folks who follow this issue, and it's getting more national attention as well, that not only are students losing credits, which translates to, in effect, wasted time and increased costs, there's a disproportionate effect on underrepresented students, historically underrepresented groups. So out of that study, 51% were Hispanic students transferring and losing some of these credits. 48% of Black students first enroll in community colleges, and again, they're affected by these transfer issues, both across state lines and then from 2-year to 4-year institutions. And so on average, 43% or students lose an average of 43% of their credits when they transfer across state lines. And this is an issue that is growing in the nation's consciousness, and the Interstate Passport provides a solution to this really difficult problem.
So what is Interstate Passport? Interstate Passport is a national program that enables block transfer of lower division general education based on learning outcomes rather than on specific courses and credits. And the idea for this exciting program came from the chief academic officers in the WICHE region. And they were at a meeting at the WICHE headquarters talking about the difficulty the students were having in transferring. At the 2-year school, students were coming back and complaining about having taken courses that don't count at the 4-year school. So they were angry with the 2-year schools. And then at the 4-year schools, they were upset with those schools for not accepting their credits, feeling that there were some arbitrary decisions being made. So collectively, the provosts and the chief academic officers from the 4-year and 2-year schools said we have to fix transfer. And so one of the ideas for doing that came out of a series of meetings was to focus on lower division general education because it is a commonality across institutions, and to establish some guiding principles in focusing on what that solution might be. So they set 4 guiding principles. One is that the solution be student focused. So if we're not doing it for the benefit of the students, there wasn't really a point in doing it. That it be faculty driven, because faculty are responsible for the quality of a student's education, and they are the ones that know what a student needs to know and be able to do. And then to ensure that there was institutional autonomy, because we have a range of institutions in this country, and we want to be respectful of the different ways that they serve their students. And then to build in some kind of quality assurance so that the solution respected and ensured quality for students when they earned ultimately a passport. So how does Passport work? The way it works is that it's based on this set of learning outcomes. And these learning outcomes were developed by a faculty from 7 different states in the WICHE region. There are 63 learning outcomes. They are based on AAC&U's good work with the LEAP Essential Learning Outcomes, and also on some WICHE research. And Dan has put the learning outcomes up here for you to see. And Dan, I'll let you talk about those.
Okay. One of the things that attracted me to the work of the Interstate Passport and to this effort is not just the way it addresses equity issues by transferring the entire block of gen ed courses from one member institution to another. It's that it's outcomes based, not content based. And so students will often get caught, and I think many of us would have had experiences with this, that a student may have been denied transfer credit because the home institution's version of a course differed in content from the course being transferred. The Passport solved that by getting faculty together to identify learning outcomes in 9 different gen ed areas, those that are pretty common across multiple institutions in the US. So here are the outcomes and descriptors for what are called the foundational skills, so oral communication, quantitative literacy, and written communication. And so again, high-level language that allows faculty at almost any institution to be able to map their courses to these outcomes. So an institution doesn't have to change its gen ed structure, its gen ed courses. All it requires is the faculty to get together and then map their courses to the Passport learning outcomes. So in a way, another metaphor that's used these days is the crosswalk, right? So the Passport outcomes are the meeting place for multiple different kinds of institutions. So you can see these foundational skills. Then there are areas of knowledge of specific concepts, which correlates pretty well with different disciplinary areas, creative expression, human cultures, human society and the individual, and then the natural sciences. And again, an institution doesn't have to follow the same structure as long as their courses can map to the outcomes that have been defined in the Passport. So that's the faculty driven focus. And the Passport maintains institutional autonomy because member institutions don't have to change their gen ed to fit the Passport. They simply map their courses and their outcomes to those. And then the final set of outcomes here are these cross-cutting skills. You can see this, the last bit of the natural science. The cross-fitting skills are those that appear across multiple courses. So critical thinking, we're all doing critical thinking all of the time, right? Just in our different disciplines in our different ways. And then teamwork and value systems. One point I would make here is that you don't have to have at your institution a teamwork course in order to be able to meet this outcome. If, for example, you can map and document that because a student who is going through your roughly maybe 34 to 36 credits of gen ed, they're getting multiple exposure and multiple experiences in internships, in team-based learning, and other kinds of cooperative education, then you can tick that box off as well without having a specific course. Same thing with critical thinking. It might even be more valuable in some ways to distribute the outcomes across multiple courses rather than having a single course that meets a set of outcomes. And so this was a really, I think for me, a really valuable and powerful way of thinking about general education, that it's not a course-to-course basis, but you're looking at the entire student experience and the courses that a student would have taken. And if you can map that to the passport outcomes, then you've created, in essence, a passport block. And just from the institutional perspective, this was a really fun exercise. It got faculty together to talk about what is important, and faculty got talking across disciplinary boundaries and actually learned a lot about what people are doing in other courses in which we're all working toward getting students to a similar kind of end, which is competency in these gen ed outcomes. So that's part of the trust. We trust other faculty to make good decisions about their courses. They map them to the passport outcomes, and they create the passport block, the blocks in these 9 different areas. And so that's part of the trust and tracking then. I think one of the really powerful things is this trust and tracking dimension that Pat can explain in more detail.
So thanks, Dan. So each institution has created this passport block, which is a menu of courses by which students can achieve the passport learning outcomes. And as Dan says, faculty at one institution trusts the faculty at another institution to identify which courses or learning outcomes by which students can achieve a passport. So when a student has achieved all of those learning outcomes with a C or better in the courses in which those learning outcomes are embedded, then the student earns a passport. And a passport typically is 30 to 38 semester credits or 45 to 54 quarter credits. But then there is this process of academic progress tracking. So institutions report to the National Student Clearinghouse those students who have earned a passport. When a student transfers to another institution in the network, that network member then reports academic progress tracking for at least 2 terms post-transfer to NSC. That data, National Student Clearinghouse then sorts and sends back to the sending institution so they can see how well their students performed post-transfer. It also, NSC also provides a aggregate report to the Interstate Passport Review Board to use in evaluating the overall effectiveness of the program. So what are some of the results of this program? We have 59 network member institutions currently participating in Interstate Passport, and they are spread across 17 states. So they are 2-year and 4-year private and public, not-for-profit institutions. And that number is growing. We currently have a grant from the ECMC Foundation that is allowing us to bring on 20 additional institutions in a variety of new states. So some of the new states that we're adding on include Texas, and North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, and Texas. I don't know if I said Texas. So we're very excited about this growth, bringing in new institutions. In terms of the impact, 49,000 students have already earned a passport since 2016. That's the year that Interstate Passport was launched, in summer of 2016. So those students benefit because they know in advance of transferring to a network member institution that all their lower division general education requirements have been met, and they can just focus on their more advanced studies. So they're not worrying about losing time and losing money repeating learning already achieved.
And for the, if I could just sort of step
Mhm.
in here, Pat, too. Again, the elegance of the interstate passports process, again, of mapping to outcomes that have been developed by teams of faculty across the WICHE institutions several years back. It addresses a number of these equity issues as well, just as a matter of course, so that students are not disadvantaged by what folks are now calling the hidden curriculum, right? So institutions will often have a petition process that allows a student to ask for special permission to have a course transfer based on that kind of paperwork that they might submit. But again, for first gen students, especially historically underrepresented students, many of the students who had started at community college, that's an opaque process. You have to know the right form at the right time with the right signatures to do those things. The passport block transfers as a whole, and students don't have to worry about that anymore. The second thing I would add there is it also solves that little niggling problem that we've all seen of the quarter hour to the semester hour issue, in which a student is left one semester hour shy or one quarter hour shy of some gen ed requirement because there's that disjunction between institutions that offer quarter hours versus those that offer semester. And then the third element of this impact, in the way that I like to think about it, is the range of institutions that have seen the value in the passport is really pretty stunning when you think about the complexity of this problem across the nation. So there are 2-year institutions, there are 4-year institutions, there are community colleges, there are historically Black universities, there are community college systems, there are specialized institutions. So all sorts of different kinds of institutions are seeing this as a way to solve a really thorny problem that their students are having to deal with. And it's just such a great relief to be able to tell students, hey, you finish your gen ed here, you transfer to a member institution, all those credits are going to count. You've met the gen ed at the transferring institution automatically. It's just really wonderful.
Yeah, I think what students like is there's no subjectivity in it. They know that block is transferring as a block, cannot be unpacked. So in terms of promise, we're very excited about this early data that we're getting in about success of post-transfer for our passport earners. And on average, over the last 2 years, we're seeing the same trend. Those students have a GPA that averages at about 3.54 versus 2.92 for students who transfer without a passport. And the average credit load that passport earners are taking is 13.63 versus 9.74. So this is all very exciting news. It's very early still. We are anxious for more institutions to join, more students to have the opportunity to earn the passport. We'll collect more data. And once we do that, we'll be able to parse that data by different dimensions, such as by race and ethnicity, by military status, by Pell eligibility. And it'll provide us an opportunity to delve into different types of transfer students to see, are there some interventions that or other strategies that we can use with different segments of the population that can help them be more successful.
Right, and those of you who work in large student success projects are probably looking at specific cohorts of students and interventions that will work for them at your institution or in your context. If you're doing work in accreditation, many of the regional accreditors now, although I guess we're moving away from the regional accreditation language, the accreditors are also looking for more fine-grained data about specific types of students. And so the work that the passport does and asks for as part of the academic progress tracking will also help tell the story of your institution in trying to meet the needs of a diverse and increasingly diverse student body. So it really ticks all the boxes, both from a student perspective, easing transfer, a faculty perspective of knowing that their judgments are going to be respected and not be overruled by some other outside agency. And then I think from the institutional perspective, for both getting data about how students are doing and solving some of those problems that are disincentives for students, that cause stop-outs, discouragement, dropout, and all those kinds of things. So it's a really elegant and provocative solution to an issue that we all know is out there.
So Dan, I know you join me in our willingness to answer any questions that any institutions might have if they're watching this little video. We have our email addresses at the bottom of the screen, and we'd be happy to respond to you. So please reach out.
And check out the website. There's all sorts of data there. There's lots of reports. There are webinars. There are other discussions that can give you a lot of background. And the staff at the Passport Network office is terrific. And folks, here it is. This is an answer to a really tough problem, and we hope you'll join us.
Great. Thanks so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.